What's up, nerds? Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the latest shakeup in the Marvel comics, but if there's anything that we've learned, it's one of their favorite things to do is shake things up. So let's just get into it and talk about Iron Fist #1. Now, as I mentioned, and as many of you have heard, with this Iron Fist series, we're being introduced to a new Iron Fist. As you can see on the cover, this obviously isn't Danny Rand because he's not blonde. So, some of you may already know exactly who this character is, but we're going to get into that here in... Although I will say Danny Rand is actually in the comic. In case anyone is wondering, he is actually in it. But anyway, we're starting out in... I don't know how to say the word. I remember in the Iron Fist show, they just pronounced it Kunlun, which kind of sounds a little bit weird to me. So I'm just going to pronounce it Kunlun. Not that much. It's not that much better, but I mean, it's a funny looking name. So there's only so much you can do with it. Anyway. So that's where we're starting out, and we can see where they have people training, and the master or the trainer is there saying, straighten those arms, I don't want to see any of you slacking off because of the upcoming Festival of Rebirth. Because if you remember, the way that the Iron Fist is chosen is basically, it's the person who basically punches the heart out of a dragon, which is pretty badass. But I do find it a little bit weird in that they're here, and we have one of the defenders, her name is Sparrow UT, and he's telling her, the dragon Shulao the Undying remains dormant within. And then it kind of gives us a little thing where it says, Sparrow, Guardian of Kunlun. She says, another festival of rebirth without you, Shulao. Rest well and grow quickly, little dragon. Kunlun is vulnerable without its champion, the Iron Fist. And then we can see where it immediately starts cracking open. And she's just like, well, they're both standing there all surprised, like, oh god, it's hatching. So... one thing I do find kind of weird about that, they literally wait for the thing to be reborn knowing that they're waiting for it, so that way they can punch its heart out, and then, it can go back to this. So, I mean, I get why that's the way it is, but it's a little bit morbid to be going about it that way. Anyway, so... we come to New York City in the present, and we can see where Danny Rand, like I said, is the one addressing the audience right here in the little captions, saying, my name is Danny Rand, and I am no longer the Iron Fist. And then we can see where he's actually on the phone as he's in the middle of a fight. And so the person who we're about to find out is actually Luke Cage, just asking him, like, are you in the middle of something? He's like, no, everything's fine. And then, of course, that's obviously a lie, because then there's this hissing sound coming from behind him, to which Luke is like, it doesn't sound fine. He's like, sorry, Luke, I'm on my way, I promise. So he kind of goes on to gives a little bit more of the description, saying, I gave up my power to save the world, as you do, and now I'm just a guy who knows a lot of kung fu. A lot of kung fu. So he kind of goes on fighting this demon thing, and he's saying, none of that matters right now, though, because I'm neck deep in monsters, and I'm late for lunch. So, a regular Tuesday. So... he's here and he's like telling Luke, like, hold on, give me a second. And then he kind of like throws the phone up in the air so he can do like his whole fighting thing. One thing I will say, he's on the phone with Luke right now, so I don't know why this phone screen looks like he's given either the option to answer the call or hang up. Here's the thing, unless the artist is like, I don't know, 70 years old, you have no excuse, and even then, you have no excuse for not knowing how a phone screen looks when you're on a call. Why did you draw it this way? He's already on the phone, so you don't need the green button. Very minor gripe there, but I did feel the need to mention it. So anyway, we see where it kind of like names each of the moves he uses, waking the waking the Viper, sorry. Crane's Pinion Feather, MTA Maintenance. So that the last one sounds very anticlimactic. Anyway, Luke is telling him, whatever you're doing, fighting supervillains, rescuing pensioners, catching the 7 train to Flushing, hurry it up. Pei and I are already at the restaurant. You know they aren't going to see us until the whole party's here. So Danny's saying, for your information, I'm already in Flushing, and you're on speakerphone. Like I said, then why is never mind. So he gets attacked from behind by one of the demon things, and he gets knocked to the ground, so it's not looking all that great for him. He's like, hey, big guy. He says, hold on a sec, Luke, I've got something on my hands. And then he's starting to say, like, I might need to call you back, but then we see where a mysterious figure shows up right behind him and punches the demon through the damn sternum, using fists of green power. Now, as we all know, Iron Fist, when he's using the power of the Iron Fist, usually his hands grow yellow. So this time it's glowing green. So We'll see why that is in a few minutes. Anyway, so he's asking like, "Who are you?" And this is where we get a full size look at the new Iron Fist or whatever. Which I mean, I don't hate it. Here's the thing: when it comes to Iron Fist, he's much more of like a minor character. I'm not gonna say that he sucks or anything. I do like the character, but for one thing, the show wasn't all that great. And I mean, they've never really made Iron Fist out to be like the most important of all characters. Not that I'm saying he needs to be, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't really care. They do this shit all the time. They've been doing it for so long. I'm like, whatever. If they're gonna change the character, they're gonna change it. A lot of times, what they do with these changes is they change it for long enough for it to be, notable, and then once nobody cares anymore, they usually just tend to go back for whatever reason. So we might have it go back to being Danny, and as we can see, he still has his ability to fight. Anyway, so the new Iron Fist is saying, just someone passing through. He's like, funny, in that outfit, you remind me of someone. I can almost put my finger on it. He says, you've got moves, kid, but your Iron Fist cosplay isn't screen accurate. Well, if we want to go there, neither was yours in the damn show. Anyway, he says the color scheme's off and the fit's too baggy. And of course, you're missing the most important element, what truly defines an Iron Fist, the heart of the dragon, the chi of Shulao. So he's like, oh, you're right. I heard that was important. And then that's where we see his fists finally start glowing yellow. So he sees it and he's like, oh shit, like that's the real deal. How did you get Shulao's chi? So he doesn't actually tell him, and then we can see where his like fist starts to kind of like fizzle out. So he says, "Kid, are you okay? Your fists are flickering," and then he just takes off running. So Luke, who apparently is still on the phone, he asks him like, are you still there, Danny, or whatever? And he says, "My name is Danny Rand, and I have no idea who the hell that was." So this is where we go over to him, and he's sitting up on, the building. This is where we get his perspective, where he says, "My name is Lin Lie, and I'm in way over my head." So many of you will already recognize him as Swordmaster. Now, they're going to go into it right here, where it says, it always starts with a fall. At least, that's what I've been told. In my case, it started with a demon, an ancient Kumiho, sent free when the Sorcerer Supreme's death broke the spell imprisoning her. My friend, White Fox, and I fought her together. When the Kumiho tried to kill White Fox, I couldn't let that happen, so I dove in front of her, and the demon shattered my family's divine weapon. The Sword of Fuxi is one of 3 weapons forged to prevent Qiyu, god of war, from rising again to devour the world. It's supposed to be unbreakable. Now, if you didn't know anything about that character, now you have at least a little bit of an understanding on him. Anyway, it says, but it splintered into pieces in my hands, and I fell, and fell, and fell. Now, I did read this. I read the whole Death of Doctor Strange event, like all the tie-ins and everything. Not the greatest storyline. It really did feel like they were just trying to speed along to the part where they get rid of Doctor Strange, like Stephen Strange, and then they just like make Clea the new Sorcerer Supreme, whatever. So we can see where he falls into the water, and then he's saying, I don't remember much after that. And he says, I think I might have died. So we can see where while he's underwater, all of a sudden, the dragon's spirit, chi, whatever, comes and finds him and basically invests itself within him. So we can see this. I'm not going to lie. This is actually a pretty nice panel. Like the full page, like shot of him being invested and like kind of empowered by the dragon. Pretty cool. He says, if I did, it clearly didn't stick. When I woke up on the shore outside Kunlun, I had no idea where I was or how I got there. All I knew was that my hands were in agony and embedded with shards of my sword, which has to suck. Anyway, he's kind of like talking about how, Qiyu is basically sealed in 3 tombs, and each one is protected by a divine weapon, of which his sword was one. And it says that his father was basically the one who removed the sword and kind of like released a little bit of the demon's power into the world. So he says, and now, thanks to me, we might not, my God, words are hard today. He says, we might never be able to seal him up again. The Sword of Fuxi is my duty, my identity. What good is a sword master without his sword? Fair enough. That's a good point. If you don't have a sword, you call yourself sword master. That's a little bit of false advertisement, isn't it? But we can also see where he has some of the shards in his hand, or yeah, in his arms, which has to be painful, I'd imagine, especially when you're using them for punching. Goddamn. Anyway. So then Danny kind of like comes up on him and he's like, there you are. Should have figured you'd be brooding on a rooftop. That's an Iron Fist classic. So, of course, Lynn's not all that happy to see him or whatever, but Danny tries to stop him and be like, look, why don't we go grab some lunch, talk to my friends, like, you can tell me how you got the chi of Shulao. And he's like, no, I'm not interested. I've got my own mission going on. So he says, let me guess. It's got something to do with those glowing green shards, like the one that demon ate. and the ones that make your fists hurt. He's like, well, that sounds incredibly like none of your business. He's like, well, I'm nosy. Come on, kid. You're clearly in over your head. Let me help you. And he's like, no, don't touch me. I don't want or need your help. And he's like, but you do need this, right? And we see where he has one of the shards of the sword. So, of course, Lin freaks out. He's like, you stole that from me. He's like, hey, quick hands, decades of practice. Come on. All you have to do is answer a few questions and I'll give you back your shiny rock. But of course, Lin is like, well, I don't have time for this. And he starts trying to fight with them. He asks him, what's your name? He's like, give it back now. He's like, well, how old are you? He says, now. So he asks him, what's your zodiac sign? I bet you're an Aries. And he's like, no, I'm a tiger. And that's where he finally lands a punch, hits him in the stomach. So Danny tells him, I may not be an Iron Fist anymore, but I recognize those forms. Some Baji Quan, some Wing Chun, and some moves they only teach in Kunlun. And then we see where he does the whole little, shifting his foot thing or whatever. So he starts, I don't know why you would announce what your moves are, or I don't know if he's reading what his moves were. I'm not entirely certain. Anyway, he says Scorpion Slice Sting, Waking the Sun. I used to call that one the Thunderer's Special. So he grabs onto his arm and then he's asked him, are you from Kunlun? He says Shanghai. So he's like, huh. And then he manages to trip him and shit. He's like, look, kid, you can't even control the dragon chi. You still got a lot to learn. And he's like, maybe, but I'm a quick study. And that's where we see he took the damn sword shard back from him. So Danny's like, what? Hey. And he just kind of flips over him and then literally bolts himself off of the side of the building. So Danny's still up there yelling, get back here, which you would think he probably would know how to do that too, but I guess not. Anyway, he pursues him into the subway. Kid jumps over the turnstile, and of course, there's a cop there who's not very effective at his job, saying, you have to pay the fare. So Danny does the same thing. He's like, don't worry, I'll come back and, pay for both of us and shit. So Kid runs onto the tracks, which I've always heard you're not supposed to do, but apparently right now it's not that dangerous. And of course, all the people standing on the platform are also telling him, yo, what's the matter with y'all? Do y'all have a death wish? Anyway, so Danny keeps running. He says he's heading deeper beneath the tunnels. Could there be? And that's where he sees a mystical door, which is another gate to Kunlun. He says that shouldn't be possible. I didn't know this one existed. And then of course he tries to jump through, and then he's like, wait, what? The gate's gone. So I'm assuming he ran face first into the wall or something. Anyway, so we see where Lin made it all the way into Kunlun, obviously. And then he's met by this girl who's also standing, with some of the demons' bodies or whatever. And she's saying, I was starting to think you'd miss all the fun. And he says, Mei Min, are those Cheiyu's demons? She's like, yep, they snuck over while you were on the other side. Let me just close this portal so nothing else crosses into Kunlun. So he's telling her, I'm sorry and everything. She's like, it's all right. I already took care of them. He's like, yeah, but we both know this is all my fault. To which she's like, maybe? It might be. Ever since I rescued you, after you washed up here half dead and kept alive only by Shulao's chi, demons have been trying to find a way into the city. So he's like, well, that definitely does sound like my fault. She's like, I'm just messing with you, dude. Our hidden city has faced countless threats over the centuries, including demons. It's not exactly unusual at this point, which is a fair point. I mean, it's a mystical city, so of course there'd be all kinds of evil forces trying to invade it and destroy it. Anyway, she says, and as a hopeful thunderer to be, I'm always down to kick some demon ass. So he's like, thunderer, huh? That would be cool. So she says, yeah, I want to be just like Sparrow UT. So she walks in, or they walk into her house or whatever, and she's saying, she's calling for her parents, saying, we're home. And that's when they walk in, we see they're basically making food for them and everything, and then they basically go to, I guess, her room, or the room that they share, and he's telling her, your parents are very nice. She says, well, careful, because they might try to adopt you. Anyway, he's saying, well, that wouldn't be so bad, and then he opens up this puzzle box where he keeps, the shards of the sword. And then he says, my family, my dad and brother disappeared just before I found this sword. Now these pieces are all I have left of them. If Chiyu's demon army gets a hold of the shards, not only will it be impossible to lock him away again, but he'll also have the power of a divine weapon. And then she's saying, oh, okay, so that's why you have the fancy puzzle box. He says it was a present from the Sorcerer Supreme. Puzzles are kind of my thing, and I'm the only one who can open it. So she's like, well, just so you know, you can borrow my family anytime. They love you. He's like, well, I don't want to be a burden. And she says, stop being so glum. Come on, let's go eat. I've got some theories I want to discuss. So they kind of sit down, and she's like talking about the sword is one of three sacred weapons that prevents an evil god named Hiyu from resurrecting and devouring the world. And now it's in pieces, and some of those pieces are embedded in your hands. He says, they're basically causing him unbearable agony. And then that's when her mom tries to give him like more soup or whatever. He's like, thank you. So she says, you're trying to collect all the shards of your sacred sword in hope of reforging it, but Chiyu's demon minions want it too. I think they want the Chi of Shulao the Undying inhabiting your body, or they just want you. So that's when her mom tells him, like, your chi is very imbalanced, that's why you're so skinny. And then Mei is saying, or it's the shards' fault. They've disrupted your body's energy flow, and now you're leaking spiritual energy, gross, everywhere. So he says, or she says, maybe that's what drew Shulao's chi to you in the first place, Linley. Your sword's tasty, tasty spiritual energy. And we can see where her dad got up and walks over to the room, and basically he can feel the energy coming from within. So we can see where he's just kind of looking pensively at his hand as he's feeling it. And then it says, that's bound to attract the supernatural. And yeah, apparently so. Because Mei says, I'm worried that if you don't find a way to balance your chi and harness Shulao's, the imbalance will kill you. We still don't know how to remove these shards safely, so we can see where she's kind of like put her hand on his, and he starts to blush, and he's like, your hands are very warm. So she says, as long as you're in Kunlun, we'll find a way to help you. I promise. And then we see where her mom starts calling out, to the dad, saying like, has the tea finished brewing? And he's like, oh yes, it's almost ready. I'll be right there, as he's transforming into one of the demons. So we'll kind of see what happens with that, because that's actually where this leaves off for right now. But yeah, we'll see what ends up happening, from there, since, I mean, I'm wondering, like, has the dad always been a demon, or was he infected somehow, like, while they were gone? I don't know. Hopefully that's answered. I don't want it to be kind of left unanswered, because that's kind of weird, how they just were either living with a demon for that whole time, or they just didn't realize that he had been taken over by a demon, if there's any way for them to know. I don't know. Maybe there's a way for him to be healed. We'll find out. But I don't know. We'll see what happens from this. Like I said, I'm not gonna be all that offended that Danny's not the Iron Fist anymore, just because, like I said, he was never that important of a character before. I've never really met anybody who was like a huge fan of Iron Fist. I'm sure that they do exist. I've just never met any, so I don't really know anybody who has that big of a problem with it. I can tell you that they probably made this change because, yeah, they wanted, he's an Asian character. He does kung fu, so he's supposed to be Asian or whatever the hell. So I don't know. We'll see how much involvement Danny's going to have in this. Like I said, a lot of times when they make changes like this, it's just to see, will we be able to make it stick? And then if they just if people lose like all interest in it, then they're like, you know what, let's go ahead and, bring it back. That obviously wasn't working. Let's take it back to the way it was. If nothing else, they usually revert back to the status quo just because they know that's the safest place to reside. But every so often they like to try new stupid ideas to see, will it actually stick? Will people respond positively? Will this resonate with enough people for us to just keep it going? And if not, well, we'll just hit the cancel button and act like it never happened. So we'll see if that's going to be the case here. I kind of get the feeling it probably will be, because he already has his own identity as Swordmaster. He's on his way to trying to like rebuild the sword. So I don't know. Or they might end up doing like this weird hybrid thing where he rebuilds the sword and he uses both, powers at the same time. It's up in the air, at least for right now. I'm sure they know which way they're going to go with it, at least for now. So we'll see what actually ends up happening from that. I'll probably, follow along with this for a little while. I will say that I did like the art in this book. I thought it was pretty good, very solid. So if nothing else, that may keep me coming back for it. But we'll see how the story itself actually develops. But I think that's going to do it for me on this review. So I don't know if anybody out there has read this particular book. If you have any thoughts on it, you know what to do. You know where to leave those thoughts. Share them with me. Do feel free to do that, because I love to hear what other people have to say. So we'll see what you guys have to say on that, and you know what to do. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed, you have the notifications on, and if you want to share the video, you know how much that means to me, because I tell you so very often. I'm sure you may get sick of it if you actually watch the videos to this part. So if you want, go ahead and do that, because I do appreciate it. But if you're done here, go and read a book. And if not, then I'll see you on my next video.